Chicken noodle code.
What's up everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make something like this in the browser using JavaScript, but we have to actually also create the 3D model, and with that we'll look at Blender because it's open source and it's awesome. You can quickly learn some of the basics to create your own little objects and even put textures on and then export into a specific file that we can now import into JavaScript and then create little games or just like, yeah, some cool like background animation, whatever you want for your website. I'm going to maybe implement some of the key codes to make this move as I press a key, and yeah, it's super awesome. We can add some sounds. As you can hear, there's the engine sound. We're going to start from scratch. We're going to make something similar, maybe a little bit more simple than this one, and Blender 4.5.3 long-term support. And before we get into this though, we're going to change some of the settings. I'm going to click on General, which gives you a cube always, a light source and a camera, and then we can kind of orbit around already looking at this. I'm using the 2-finger gestures on my trackpad, but if you're uncomfortable with that, you can also use the wheelie thing up here, and there's a zoom tool as well. You click and drag upwards or downwards with the mouse to zoom in and out. There's also the move tool, click and drag sideways up and down. So that might help. If you're on the trackpad, or if you have a mouse with the scroll wheel, you can use the scroll wheel as you click on the scroll wheel, I think, and then we have the shift key, which lets you move up and down. So you hold the shift key and then the mouse wheel. Yeah, and then one thing that's very important, so if I deselect, for example, and I want to reselect the object, I'm using right click. So this is one of the main changes that you might have to do if you want to follow this tutorial. So I'm going to click on Edit, Preferences, and Key Map, and you're going to set the Select with Mouse button to right, and that's all. So now we're ready to go. So how can I actually transform this into a spaceship, for example? So there's multiple ways. You could now start with a different shape, but usually the cube is a good starting point. So I'm going to hit the Tab key, which takes you into edit mode. All right, and you can also see the thing up here is kind of like a drop-down menu, which changed to edit mode, and you can always, you know, manually switch back to object mode. And so the idea is that inside of the edit mode, I can select now with the right click single vertices. Those are the little points of each object. If you hold shift, for example, and you click on another point, it's going to select these guys together at the same time. So now these 2 points are selected, and I could start grabbing them, which is G, the shortcut to basically move them. G, and then you see what happens. And then oops, and of course Control Z to undo is your friend. If you want to say I wanted to move it but not like in all directions, you can kind of lock into specific axes. So if I say I'm going to hit G and then X, it will only move it alongside the X axis. So that is maybe helpful. In addition, you can also use numbers to move in increments. If I say 1, now it's using it in increments of 1, which I think, if we can look up the dimensions, is set to meters. And yeah, so you can see here that is in meters, but then also we can basically always modify it by editing these numbers here. So right now the selection is showing up here with their 3 respective coordinates, X, Y, Z, and then if I say, oh, 1 meter was wrong, I can actually fix that and say, I want it 2 meters, and then hit enter. Oh, this was on the Z axis. I apologize, I have to undo this actually. So this was 1, and on the X axis, that's where we moved it. I want to move it, let's say 3 meters. Yeah. Yeah, But even easier than that is selecting differently. Instead of selecting or shift selecting multiple points, I would recommend the face select. So I'm clicking on face select mode up here in the toolbar, and this allows us to right click on entire surfaces. Now I could move them, so that would be G, and then either you constrain it with the axes, so I could say Y and then move it alongside the Y axis. That is an option, but let's undo that. Instead, I'm going to use a different shortcut. That's E for extrude, E, and then it kind of gives you another segment of the same thing, which I can now scale out, let's say towards the right. I'm going to say maybe I want to constrain that by pressing 1, so it's going to lock in at 1 meter, and then I hit enter. Now the cool thing is I could also now scale the whole thing down using S as the shortcut, and then you can do stuff like that, kind of like making it, yeah, a little bit more slick looking. And I can play this multiple times, so E, and I'm going to lock it into the Y axis, and 1, enter. Now scale, S, scale down, and this takes a little bit of practice, so you might not be able to follow completely like one-on-one. You might have to actually pause the video and try this for yourself a little bit, but that's absolutely normal. So I was thinking we could basically create some wings left and right, and then kind of extrude the front to kind of like an airplane shape. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to extrude one more time, so E, Y to constrain the axis, and then 1, increment, and enter. And I'm going to say scale, and I'll scale this whole thing down a bit. Boom. Looking kind of cool. So now I could do the exact same thing on the other side, or I'm going to work with a modifier to mirror the whole thing. This is really up to you. I find the modifiers do speed up the modeling process. So if we want to add a modifier, we should maybe look into it. So we only model 1/2 of the 3D object, and then the other part will be mirrored towards the other side. So I'm going to go out of edit mode to object mode, and we're going to look into the modifiers. So modifiers you will find in the sidebar on the right, where it says modifiers. That's a little wrench symbol, so I'm clicking that, and I will say add modifier, and we want to find the mirror modifier, which I think is I don't even know anymore. Edit, generate. Let's search mirror. It's in generate. All right, so now we're mirroring along the x-axis. That's not what I want. I want to use the y-axis, and then boom, you see what happened. Whoa! But it's now doing both. It's doing also the x-axis, so I'm going to take off the x because that keeps the shape a little bit simpler. Now back to edit mode, I can basically move things around. I mean, I could also move things around here in the object mode. If I hit G, that also works, but it moves the entire thing. So I'm going to undo that. Instead, I'll go back to edit mode. You can hit tab, it goes into edit mode. So now if I start moving things about, you can see the original cube shape. Let's select maybe this. Maybe another way of selecting that might be more appropriate is by clicking and dragging across multiple things, but for that I would maybe turn on a different shading, which is the wireframe shading. So here you can click on wireframe, and then you can kind of see through the whole thing. And if I say I want to select multiple things, click and drag, so it selects all across the entire right-hand side of the object, but also yeah, you can kind of see it's using face select still for that. And then I could add some more. Let me see, I actually wanted to select face select more because I have to make the selection bigger. All right, so if I'm here now thinking that the left-hand side is being mirrored, let's see if I'm grabbing this, see, you can kind of see the mirroring in action. And then of course on grab, if I want to extend the shape a little bit, I would now also lock it in onto the y-axis, so it only moves in a straight line and not up and down and backwards. All right, and it doesn't matter if it overlaps a little bit. Let's say we're going to do it freely by clicking with the mouse at a point where it looks good, and then yeah. And like I said, right now we only have to focus on one half of the object, the other half is being mirrored, which is super awesome. All right, so I'm going back to the normal flat shading here, or solid shading viewport, and that is easier for me to see how the shape actually looks. I'm right clicking on the front surface. I want to extrude that part, so let's see what happens if I say E, and then we could constrain it on the x-axis to make it pull forward like that. And then I will scale this as well, so this is S. Zip to scale it down, not too much because I don't want the split in the front. Oops, I have to do this one again. Control Z. So S, scale down a bit until we see, right before we see the split in the front. Boom. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom out. All right, I mean, this may not be perfect yet, but the cool thing is we can add another modifier on top of that to kind of subdivide all of our shapes, and that will make it look smoother, to make it look rounder, so we don't have to do all this much editing. So this could already be enough to say like, cool, the rest I'm going to do with textures, or I can add additional parts, which is absolutely fine as well. So making a new object, let's say I had some kind of window or entry port on the spaceship, I could just add an additional object and then scale it and put it on top of it. So for now, this is fine. Or maybe not. I think we're going to make the front a little narrower. So this is a typical example where I don't want to face select the entire thing. I just want to edge select. So that's the middle button here. So I click on edge selection, right click on the edge that you want to move. Let's say in the front it's a little bit too wide, and I'm going to now say G, see, and then I will grab this on the X, not X, on the Y axis. I'm going to this doesn't look bad. I'm going to select all, which is A, and then we can scale the whole thing as is to make it flatter. So it's going to be S, which you could just make it smaller altogether, but we're going to constrain the Z axis, so it will make it a little bit flatter. All right, zoop, or the opposite. Boop. Ah, like that. That looks smooth. All right, so this will be the basis for our spaceship. It still says unsaved. Maybe I should actually take care of saving the file. So I'm going to File, Save As on my desktop. This will be called Spaceship. And I think I might have already a spaceship, so I'm going to call this one New, the Spaceship New, Save. All right. Back into object mode. The whole thing kind of looks like this now, and I can zoom around. So all it needs, like material, maybe some textures, we'll see. But let's take care of the actual modifier. So the modifier, if I deactivate the real-time shading here in the viewport, you can kind of deactivate to see what it looks like without that. The thing would look like this. So it's just one half, and I do recommend applying this. So I'll say Save, Control S, and then I'm going to apply the modifier. So that means the modifier will go away, kind of baking it into the current object. So now when I go into edit mode, I have access to both halves on left and right. There seems to be a little bit of an overlap. I don't think it's gonna have an impact on our model, on our texturing. We'll see. Hopefully not, but that's for another video.
Chicken noodle code. Chicken noodle code.